Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, June 14, 2024. Supreme Court rules a bump stock attachment to a semiautomatic rifle, device to make it fire faster, does not turn the firearm into a machine gun prohibited by federal law. The 6-3 decision strikes down a Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives regulation that was put into effect after the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting, in which a gunman used a bump stock to kill dozens of people. U.S. House passes the National Defense Authorization Act, the annual military programs and policy bill, after debating and voting on so-called culture war amendments offered by Republicans, touching on abortion, transgender health care, diversity, and an attempt to return a Confederate memorial to its original spot in Arlington National Cemetery. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin responds to Russian President Vladimir Putin's latest demands for a ceasefire in the war with Ukraine. Defense Secretary is at a NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels, Belgium. Pope Francis is the first pope to address a G7 leaders summit. President Joe Biden is attending that summit in Italy. The pope spoke about artificial intelligence, which he called a fascinating tool and also a terrifying one. Ahead of Father's Day, Congressman Jimmy Gomez, Democrat of California, talks about his Congressional Dad's Caucus agenda. Former President Donald Trump endorses Maryland Senate Republican nominee Larry Hogan, who rejects the endorsement. And we remember journalist Howard Fineman and professional basketball player Jerry West, who both died this week. Story from Newsmax. The U.S. Supreme Court on Friday ruled in favor of a challenge to a federal ban on bump stock devices that enable semi-automatic weapons to fire rapidly, like machine guns, dealing a setback to yet another firearms restriction, one enacted under Republican former President Donald Trump. The justices in a 6-3 ruling upheld a lower court's decision, siding with Michael Cargill, a gun shop owner and gun rights advocate from Austin, Texas, who challenged the ban by claiming that a U.S. agency improperly interpreted a federal law banning machine guns as extending to bump stocks. The conservative justices were in the majority, and the liberal justices in dissent. The rule was imposed after the devices were used during the 2017 mass shooting that killed 58 people at a Las Vegas country music festival. That was from Newsmax. Michael Cargill, the plaintiff, posted a video on X after the decision.
Breaking news. I did it. Michael Cargill versus Merrick Garland. The Department of Justice, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the bump stock lawsuit. I beat him in the United States Supreme Court. I was told over 5 years ago, why are you going down this road? No one cares about bump stocks. Let's go ahead and let them take the bump stock. But instead, I stood and fought. And because of this, the bump stock case is going to be the case that saves everything. It's going to stop the ATF from coming after their brace, the triggers, all different parts and pieces that they're trying to ban. And I'm glad I stood up and fought. So now we have a case that is case law that we can move forward around this country and defend our Second Amendment rights. As always, more guns equals less crime. You go out there and you buy yourself a gun. Better yet, get yourself a bump stock.
Michael Cargill, gun shop owner in Austin, Texas, the plaintiff in that Supreme Court case. Cargill v. Garland decided today. On Capitol Hill, Congressman Byron Donalds, Republican from Florida, and Corey Mills, also Republican from Florida, spoke to Associated Press, who posted some of their responses.
I think that the Supreme Court's ruling demonstrates once again that the Second Amendment shall not be infringed means exactly that. So very relieved with the outcome.
A bump stock does not cause anybody to be shot in the United States of America. That is the shooter that does that, not a piece of equipment. The bump stocks, if you will, is really just a brace for people who have arm injuries who still actively shoot.
Congressman Byron Donalds and Congressman Corey Mills, both Republican from Florida, part of their answers as posted by Associated Press. Texas Tribune story reads, the almost 100-year-old law banning machine guns defines the weapon as, quote, any weapon which shoots, is designed to shoot, or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. And in the decision from the Supreme Court, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote for the majority, we hold that a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock is not a machine gun because it cannot fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. And even if it could, it would not do so automatically. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissent, wrote, Today, the court puts bump stocks back in civilian hands. To do so, it casts aside Congress's definition of machine gun and seizes upon one that is inconsistent with the ordinary meaning of the statutory text and unsupported by context or purpose. When I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck. A bump stock equipped semi-automatic rifle fires automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. Because I, like Congress, call that a machine gun, I respectfully dissent. That was from Justice Sonia Sotomayor in the decision. Congresswoman Dina Titus, Democrat from Nevada, posted a video of herself outside the Supreme Court.
Hello, I'm Dina Titus, and I'm coming to you from the steps of the Supreme Court. What a travesty this court is. Just this morning, they overturned the prohibition against the use of bump stocks. The American public knows we don't need weapons of war on our streets. So now let's pass my bump stock bill and take care of this problem.
Congresswoman Dina Titus. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke to reporters at the airport in Atlanta, where she had an event dealing with the economy.
It's good to be back in Atlanta, and I just briefly want to discuss the Supreme Court's ruling today on bump stocks. Understand what bump stocks do. They allow the firing of hundreds of bullets a minute. It was bump stocks that resulted in 60 people being dead in Las Vegas, Nevada on 1 October. And what the court did today is really rolling back what otherwise is important progress to be made to prevent gun violence in America. And frankly, when we think about the decisions voters are going to make in November, there's a clear contrast between where we stand and the former president. Let's not forget, the former president literally said folks need to get over it as it relates to the gun violence issue in America. So let's take this seriously. Let's understand that we all have the ability to weigh in on this important issue, especially when 1 in 5 Americans has a family member that was killed by gun violence, when we know that gun violence is the #1 cause of death of the children of America. Not cancer, not car accidents, gun violence. So voters have a choice in November.
Is there recourse that the administration can take?
Vice President Kamala Harris speaking to reporters on the airport tarmac in Atlanta. That was the noise of the plane behind her. More reaction to the Supreme Court decision. Congressman Jeff Duncan, Republican of South Carolina, posting on X, today's SCOTUS decision to overturn the bump stock ban is a victory for the Second Amendment and protecting the rights of every American. If the government can arbitrarily classify a firearm as a machine gun, then our rights are in jeopardy and the Constitution will be eroded. And Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, Democrat of California, writes today's SCOTUS decision will unleash weapons of war on our communities, allowing shooters to fire hundreds of rounds in minutes. My Republican colleagues should immediately bring up a bill to permanently ban bump stocks like the one I support to keep neighbors and loved ones safe. The Supreme Court still has 23 cases to issue opinions on this term, including such high-profile ones as whether former President Donald Trump is immune from prosecution on charges he tried to overturn the 2020 election. The next scheduled day for Supreme Court opinions to be released June 20th. Story from the Washington Post. The Republican-controlled House passed on Friday its version of the annual defense policy bill, sprawling legislation that the chamber's far-right members loaded with a wish list of provisions that seek to roll back diversity protections and restrict service members and their families from accessing abortion and transgender health care. The $895.3 billion National Defense Authorization Act, which sets Pentagon policy and guides funding for the year ahead, was approved by a vote of 217 to 199, falling largely along party lines. The House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat from New York, spoke about the defense bill at his news conference today, including an amendment that Republicans tried to add. It was unsuccessful, to return a Confederate monument to its original location in Arlington National Cemetery.
These Republican amendments that have been attached to the National Defense Authorization Act are completely out of control. 192 Republicans voted to restore a Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery, including Representative D'Esposito, Representative Molinaro, and Representative Williams from New York. What is the rationale? In a time where America is facing a dangerous world with challenges all across the globe to decide you want to restore a Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery. What tradition are extreme MAGA Republicans, including Representative D'Esposito, Representative Molinaro, and Representative Williams, upholding? What Confederate tradition are you upholding? Is it slavery, rape, kidnap, Jim Crow, lynching, racial oppression, or all of the above? What exactly is the Confederate tradition that extreme MAGA Republicans in 2024 are upholding, and you want to use the National Defense Authorization Act to turn back the clock on progress that has been made in the United States of America? Is shameful.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, at his weekly news conference today. The Reconciliation Monument, as it's known, was removed in 2023. An article at thehill.com says the statue, allegedly designed to represent the American South, includes a black mammy holding what is thought to be the child of a white officer, as well as an enslaved man following his owner to war. Black mammies were depictions of black women seemingly happy with their enslavement. That was from the article at The Hill. The amendment was offered on Thursday on the House floor by Congressman Andrew Clyde, Republican from Georgia.
I rise today in support of my amendment, which relocates the Reconciliation Monument, sometimes referred to as the Reconciliation Memorial, back to its original location in Arlington National Cemetery. And I'm very grateful for the support of Chairman Rogers on this amendment. Under the direction of President Biden, the Reconciliation Memorial was removed on December 18, 2023. This monument in Arlington was a powerful symbol of the healing and unification of our nation after the deep divisions of the Civil War. American leaders like President Abraham Lincoln and Union General Ulysses Grant knew that a divided nation could not stand, and they tirelessly worked on promoting reconciliation. In 1898, following the end of the Mexican-American War, President McKinley undertook a process to create greater national unity. In 1906, President McKinley authorized the construction of the Reconciliation Memorial. Unveiled in 1914 by President Woodrow Wilson, this monument, designed by a Jewish-American sculptor, features a woman crowned with an olive wreath, symbolizing peace. For over a century, presidents of both parties have understood the purpose of this memorial of reconciliation and have honored it by sending wreaths to the monument. This tradition, showing national unity and respect, has been carried on regardless of the party or politics of the sitting president. Even President Obama understood the Reconciliation Monument in the context of what it stands for. Unity, not division, when he continued on the presidential tradition of sending a wreath to the monument. In doing so, presidents have continued to emphasize the message of this monument: reconciliation and unity, not division.
Congressman Andrew Clyde, Republican from Georgia, on the House floor on Thursday during debate on the National Defense Authorization Act, offering an amendment to move that monument in Arlington National Cemetery back to its original spot. His amendment failed by a vote of 192 to 230. On the no side, 206 Democrats and 24 Republicans. After all the debate over the past few days on amendments to the NDAA, the bill passed today. Final vote was 217 to 199, mostly party line. 3 Republicans voted no, 6 Democrats voted yes. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, the majority leader, posting on X, the NDAA coming out of the House is loaded with anti-LGBTQ plus, anti-choice, anti-environment, and other divisive amendments guaranteed not to pass the Senate. We will have to work together to pass a bipartisan NDAA that honors and respects all who serve in defense of our nation. And this week, the Senate Armed Services Committee approved its version. Stars and Stripes reports that That committee is seeking a $25 billion increase to the White House proposal for the 2025 defense budget, as well as a much smaller pay raise for junior enlisted troops than approved by the House. From AP, NATO defense ministers on Friday approved a plan to provide reliable long-term security aid and military training for Ukraine after delays in Western deliveries of funds, arms, and ammunition helped invading Russian forces to seize the initiative on the battlefield. Announcing the move after chairing a meeting of defense ministers in Brussels, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that the effort would be headquartered at a U.S. military base in Wiesbaden, Germany, and involve almost 700 staff. That was from AP. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was at this meeting and held a news conference after he was asked about air defense systems for Ukraine and also Russian President Vladimir Putin's latest conditions to end the war.
Max Delaney, AFP. Two questions. Yesterday, President Biden mentioned that there were commitments from 5 countries to provide Patriot systems for Ukraine. Can you give more details on which countries he's talking about? And then secondly, Russian President Vladimir Putin today outlines his so-called peace demands for Ukraine, which was withdrawing from territory Russia claims and withdrawing its bid to join NATO. What's your response to those demands from Putin? Thank you.
So, 2 questions. Which one do you want me to answer? Okay, let's start with the Patriots. And your question was, President Biden had mentioned that there were 5 countries that were going to provide more Patriots. I think you know that I spend a lot of time along with the rest of the leadership and our senior leadership, spent a lot of time focusing on doing everything that we can to get Ukraine as much air defense capability as possible. That includes platforms, it includes interceptors that support those platforms. And we have made progress. We will continue to work this very, very hard. And I'll let the countries that will provide that capability speak for themselves. That's the approach that we've always taken. And again, I think that we will continue to see positive results. But none of these decisions are hard for any country. None of these decisions are easy for any country. And so I'll let the countries speak for themselves. And the second question, I think, was on Putin's comments with respect to what he wants to see in order to have a change in this conflict or things move towards peace. Putin has illegally occupied sovereign Ukrainian territory. He is not in any position to dictate to Ukraine what they must do to bring about a peace. I think, that's exactly the kind of behavior that we don't want to see. We don't want to see a leader of one country wake up one day and decide that he wants to erase borders and annex the territory of his neighbor. That's not the world that any of us want to live in, and so I think he is not in my view, not in a position to dictate to Ukraine what it must do to pursue peace. Putin can end this war today. He started this war with no provocation. He's had some, hundreds of thousands of troops wounded and killed in this unjust and unprovoked invasion. He could end this today if he chose to do that. And we call upon him to do that and to leave Ukrainian sovereign territory.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin at NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, a news conference at the end of the NATO defense ministers' meeting. President Joe Biden spent another day at the Group of 7 or G7 Leaders Summit in Italy, attending sessions on migration and the Indo-Pacific and having a bilateral meeting with the Italian Prime Minister. He also went to a session with Pope Francis on artificial intelligence. First time a pope has been to a G7 summit. The Pope writes CBS News urged the leaders of the world's wealthy democracies Friday to keep human dignity foremost in developing and using artificial intelligence, warning that the technology risks turning human relations into mere algorithms. Here's a minute of those remarks.
As we know, artificial intelligence is an extremely powerful tool employed in many kinds of human activity, from medicine to the world of work, from culture to the field of communications, and from education to politics. It is now safe to assume that its use will increasingly influence the way we live, our social relationships, and even the way we conceive of our identity as human beings. The question of artificial intelligence, however, is often perceived as ambiguous. On the one hand, it generates excitement for the possibilities it offers, while on the other, it gives rise to fear for the consequences it foreshadows. In this regard, we could say that all of us, albeit to varying degrees, experience two emotions. We are enthusiastic when we imagine the advances that can result from artificial intelligence, but at the same time, we are fearful when we acknowledge the dangers inherent in its use. After all, we cannot doubt that the advent of artificial intelligence represents a true cognitive industrial revolution, which will contribute to the creation of a new social system characterized by complex, epochal transformations.
Pope Francis speaking to the summit of the G7 leaders in Italy. G7 are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. A headline from Associated Press: G7 final statement renews pledge of support to Ukraine, calls for Gaza ceasefire, announces launch of initiatives to fight people smuggling, harness AI to create jobs. Artificial intelligence was also discussed today by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Democrat from California, in Washington at an event on emerging technologies hosted by the group Public Knowledge. Congressman Eshoo is the chair of the Congressional Artificial Intelligence Caucus and spoke about her proposed legislation, the AI Foundation Model Transparency Act.
AI research and development requires three main ingredients: good data, computing power, and people. These are very expensive resources and are currently accessible only to the largest technology companies, many of them located in my congressional district. All sectors of society. We have many sectors that comprise our society, including the medical sector, the academic sector, the small business sector, the nonprofit sector, and very importantly, the public sector deserve access to these critical resources. This will enable researchers and innovators across the United States to develop AI tools to bolster our national security, enhance our economic competitiveness, and improve society in numerous ways. That's why I think it's so important for Congress to pass my legislation, the Create AI Act. It's bipartisan, it's bicameral legislation, which establishes something that's called the National AI Research Resource, the NARE, a shared cyber research infrastructure that will provide these necessary resources to all sectors of our society. I've worked with, over the last 5-6 years, with the Stanford Human-Centered AI Institute, and a really incredible, I think one of the godmothers of AI, Fei Li, Dr. Li. I think that this effort is really fundamental and critical to ensuring that we develop AI that is safe, that is secure, and that is trustworthy.
Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Democrat from California, chair of the Congressional Artificial Intelligence Caucus, at a program on emerging technologies held in Washington, D.C., hosted by the group Public Knowledge. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Tune into C-SPAN's live coverage of the 2024 National Political Conventions, starting with the Republicans' 4-day event in Milwaukee on July 15th. Next up, catch the Democrats as they convene in Chicago, kicking off on August 19th. Stay connected to C-SPAN for an uninterrupted and unfiltered glimpse of democracy at work. Watch the Republican and Democratic National Conventions live this summer on C-SPAN. C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app, and online at cspan.org. C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of politics. Powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. It's free and wherever you find your podcasts. This Sunday, June 16th, is Father's Day, and an article from Nexstar, a group of dads in Congress, are teaming up to support policies they say will help families ahead of Father's Day. California Congressman Jimmy Gomez started the Congressional Dads Caucus last year when his son Hodge was a baby. Gomez's group of fellow dad lawmakers has grown too. He says they encourage each other to take time off to care for family, but know that's not an option for everyone. That's why Gomez says the Dads Caucus is renewing their push for policies they say will help families. That story from Nexstar. Congressman Gomez led a Dads Caucus news conference on Thursday on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol building.
Dads are more involved in parenting than ever before, and they want to be able to put their families first. Unfortunately, that's not an option for every parent. Millions of our constituents are forced to choose between their paychecks and taking care of their children. Whether it's a lack of paid leave or unaffordable child care, the American economy isn't working for working families. The average parent is spending a quarter of their income on child care. Meanwhile, new mothers and fathers are having to skip paychecks to stay home with newborns. These issues don't just only hurt families, they're also dragging down our economy. Nearly 3 million parents with young kids have been forced to quit their job or make a job change due to child care issues. The thing is, we know the policies that can make our economy work and work for families. That's why today we're introducing our Father's Day resolution, which demands action on our 3 pillars. Paid leave, so every new parent can put family first. Federal investment in child care, so every child care worker is paid a living wage and every parent can breathe easy knowing their kids are with a quality care provider. And finally, one of the strongest tools we have to decrease child poverty and help families make ends meet, the Enhanced Child Tax Credit, which delivers a monthly check to middle and low-income families who need it the most. Our Dads Caucus has worked closely on these 3 pillars with the Mamas Caucus and advocacy groups. For years, these groups have laid the foundation and groundwork, and we're here to amplify their efforts. We expanded beyond our 3 pillars in the past year to address other critical issues. We're closely working with the Black Maternal Health Caucus to address maternal mortality. We've also took immediate action when lead was found in children's food, applesauce and Lunchables, and took that issue straight to the FDA, and we haven't stopped trying to hold them accountable. And 3 Dads Caucus members have established working groups. Mental Health Working Group, led by Representative Rob Menendez, Gun Violence Prevention Working Group, led by Rep. Dan Goldman, and the Social Media Technology and the Family Working Group by Jack Achenschloss. Times are changing, and so are the needs of our family. It's time for Congress to catch up, and it's time for more dads to do their part to push for these policies here in Congress. Parenting is a shared responsibility, and so is the legislative duty to support our families.
Congressman Jimmy Gomez, Democrat from California, at a Congressional Dads Caucus news conference on Thursday ahead of Father's Day, which is this Sunday, June 16th. The Nexstar article about this event ends with this. The caucus is made up of just Democrats right now, a barrier to passing bills. Gomez said he's had discussions with Republicans to get some on board. Wall Street today, the Dow down 57, S&P down 2, NASDAQ up 21. Former President Donald Trump, writes Associated Press, told an influential group of CEOs that he wants to further cut the corporate tax rate he lowered while in office, while President Biden's chief of staff separately told them that the Democratic incumbent's emphasis on global alliances would help their businesses. Both Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee, and Jeffrey Zients met behind closed doors on Thursday with the Business Roundtable in Washington. with Zients stepping in for Biden during the president's meetings with a group of 7 leaders in Italy. The prominent group representing more than 200 CEOs just rolled out an effort to preserve the tax breaks for businesses that Trump signed into law in 2017. Neither side commented publicly on what was said in the meeting, which comes as Biden and Trump head toward a 2020 rematch with sharply different views on taxes and the economy. That was from AP. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate this year, is rejecting the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. A Hogan campaign spokesperson gave a statement to multiple media outlets. Governor Hogan has been clear he is not supporting President Trump, just as he didn't in 2016 and 2020. Donald Trump was asked about this race on Thursday by Fox Business Channel.
What about Maryland? There's some back and forth with the RNC, some of your campaign folks about Larry Hogan, some comments he made the day that you were convicted in New York. Are you going to support Larry Hogan to win that Senate seat?
Yeah, I'd like to see him win. I think he has a good chance to win. I would like to see him win. And we got to take the majority. We have to straighten out our country. So I'd like to see him win. He's somebody that can win. I would. I know other people made some strong statements, but I can just say from my standpoint, I'm about the party and I'm about the country, and I would like to see him win.
So you're endorsing him?
Well, nobody's asked me that, but essentially I would be endorsing him, yeah.
Former President Donald Trump on Fox Business Channel on Thursday. Washington Examiner article reads the open seat is to replace retiring Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, and is one of more than a half dozen that Democrats must defend to have a shot at maintaining their Senate majority. Hogan, a centrist Republican notorious for his years of fierce Trump criticism, has given the GOP the first opportunity in decades to flip the deep blue seat. But Trump's backing could prove to be a kiss of death in the old line state, where Hogan needs to win over centrist Democrats and independents, as well as Republicans. The Trump campaign just 2 weeks ago declared Hogan politically dead for saying people should respect the verdict, shortly before the former president was convicted on 34 criminal counts in his New York hush money trial. That was from the Washington Examiner. The Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Maryland is Angela Alsobrooks, Prince George's County executive, and the head of the Maryland Democratic Party responded to the Donald Trump endorsement of Larry Hogan in a video on Thursday.
Hi, Ken Ullman here, chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, and I just wanted to share some breaking news. I just actually stepped out of a big meeting to share with you, but Donald Trump has just officially endorsed Larry Hogan for Senate in Maryland. Now we know this race is crystal clear what is at stake in November. Donald Trump and Larry Hogan are running together. Donald Trump knows that the U.S. Senate is in play and that Larry Hogan will be the 51st vote for Republicans to control the Senate to support Donald Trump's agenda. Democrats, independents, and Republicans who know how important this is, we need your help. We can't have a further packing of the Supreme Court jeopardizing our freedoms and everything that'll come along with having Donald Trump and Larry Hogan and the Republicans in the U.S. Senate in charge. We need your help. We need your support. Thank you.
Ken Ullman, Maryland Democratic Party chair, in a video posted Thursday. The Real Clear Politics polling average on this Senate race in Maryland has Larry Hogan at 46.5% and Angela Alsobrooks at 40%. Story from NBC News. Veteran political correspondent Howard Fineman, who spent 3 decades covering the corridors of power in Washington for Newsweek before he became an analyst for MSNBC and other outlets, died from pancreatic cancer, his wife announced Tuesday. Fineman, who was 75, died Monday at his home in Washington. Amy Nathan posted on her husband's account on X, "I am heartbroken to share my brilliant and extraordinary husband passed away last night, surrounded by those he loved most, his family. He couldn't have been adored more. The world was a better place because he lived in it and wrote about it." In 2008, Howard Fineman was on C-SPAN 2's Book TV at the Los Angeles Festival of Books, talking about his new book, The 13 American Arguments, Enduring Debates That Define and Inspire Our Country.
The way I have them organized is to start with a central question of who is a person. I think it's paramount in our society given the way our country is set up. And by the way, in my book I talk about the 180 years of history that preceded the time when the founders arrived in Philadelphia to write the Constitution. But the key question has always been, in our individual-based society, who is a person entitled to be seen as such by our society and by our Constitution? Well, as you know, we spent hundreds of years trying to settle the question of whether African Americans were persons in the eyes of our law and our society. It took a civil war in which 600,000 were killed to begin addressing that question. It took a first civil rights movement and a second civil rights movement for it to reach the point where Barack Obama could launch his campaign, and I was there in Springfield, Illinois, when he stood on the steps of the State House in Springfield, where Abraham Lincoln had launched his own crusade, and Obama said, in essence, let's prove that we are past this once and for all. That's still an open question, as you know. It's very much of the moment, and the point of my book is that every headline that you see, every controversy that you hear about, or should hear about, is just the wave on the sea controlled by the deeper currents of our nature and our arguments.
Journalist and author Howard Fineman in 2008 on C-SPAN 2's Book TV, talking about his new book at the time, The 13 American Arguments, Enduring Debates That Define and Inspire Our Country. Howard Fineman died this week at the age of 75. President Biden put out a statement that read in part, "Great journalists hold a mirror up to the nation to reveal the good, the bad, and the truth of who we are as Americans. For 4 decades, Howard Fineman was one of the great journalists of our time. His career covered much of mine, and throughout the debates over big issues and historic campaigns, I respected his reporting and insights, whether I agreed or disagreed with him." National Basketball Association Hall of Famer Jerry West, who also had a successful career as an NBA team executive after his playing days, also passed away this week at the age of 86. Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove, Democrat from California, paid tribute on the House floor.
Jerry West was a man of many names. The Logo, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Outside, and Zeke from Cabin Creek. He was also a man of many titles: player, coach, scout, and general manager, all for my Los Angeles Lakers. After a stellar college career at his home state, West Virginia University, West was drafted 2nd overall to the Lakers, beginning a career that would span over 40 years. As a player, West dominated the backcourt, garnering all-star honors in each of his 14 playing seasons and bringing home a championship in 1972. Upon his retirement, he came back to the Lakers as a head coach, then scout, and finally as an executive where he truly thrived. West constructed the Lakers' 1980s Showtime dynasty, which helped bring the NBA into the mainstream and won 5 championships. Towards the end of his tenure as general manager, he orchestrated the trade for Kobe and signed Shaq, leading to a championship in his final season with the Lakers and setting them up to complete a three-peat with 2 more in the following 2 seasons. While West later pursued other opportunities in the NBA, he will forever be a Los Angeles legend for his fierce loyalty and contributions to the team and our city.
Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove, Democrat from California, on the House floor. That nickname, the Logo, is a reference to Jerry West's silhouette being the basis for the NBA logo. Jerry West was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2019 by former President Trump in the White House Oval Office. Jerry West spoke about his life experiences.
I've experienced a country at war, a country at peace, a time when we huddled around a radio with terrible reception to hear President Roosevelt's weekly addresses, to a time when we read on our cell phone President Trump's instantaneous tweets. You're pretty good at that, by the way. I suffered excruciating losses both personally and professionally. I'm not going to say how many NBA final losses, those damn Celtics, and exhilarating victories. But the one I cherish most was with a group of fellow amateurs at the 1960 Olympics as I stood on the gold medal stand in Rome next to my friend and soon-to-be adversary, Oscar Robertson. I thought about my brother, David, who had died fighting in Korea when I was 13, and how proud I was to represent the United States of America in West Virginia, in the state of West Virginia. I tried in my life to do for others what David did for me: lead, protect, and assist whenever possible. The David West and Willie Akers Academic Center at West Virginia University is a place where I hope young men and women in my home state can also dream about the top of the mountain and take the first steps toward realizing those dreams.
Jerry West, NBA Hall of Famer and team executive, getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2019. He passed away this week at the age of 86. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter Word for Word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night and weekend.